Welcome to Season 3 of The Lifestyle Chase, and I'm your host, Chris Little. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. To help this podcast grow, please share it on social media, rate 5 stars, tell your friends, and check out the past 140 episodes and counting. You can follow me on Instagram at Christian Little and at The Lifestyle Chase. Thanks for listening. Let's get started. All right, so welcome to The Lifestyle Chase. I have brought back a popular guest, the one and only Kyle Dobbs. And in addition to that, I'm not even going to have you do like the crazy repetitive intro of who you are, because in the last year, I think I've given you 30 shout outs on the show. So people have a strong idea of who you are. You first appeared on the show episode 51 on June 3rd, 2019. One of the most listened to episodes. So it's cool because it contrasts just how far things have come, how much has changed. It's some eye-opening perspective for just how internet connections, just personal, interpersonal connections can really develop. Because I know I can vouch for the fact that my knowledge of you and our growing connection and your mentorship of me was a game changer this past year in 2020. I would say it pretty much saved my training career. So with that being said, I'm privileged to have you back on the show, excited to have a conversation. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, Christian, and I really appreciate you having me coming on. And those words really do mean a lot. That's the absolute best feedback I could ever get from one of the coaches we work with. And Matt and I were definitely really excited to have you in the group and running AMRAP. And I'd appreciate all the shouts. I appreciate all the kind words. And I'm definitely glad that you took that much away from it, that it helped you that much, because that's really our intention is helping coaches build their careers. And obviously we started the group pre-COVID, at normal times. And it's definitely changed in emphasis, over the course of the last year, just because of the circumstances we've been under. And we've definitely had a lot of coaches who've been transitioning from an in-person space and a personal training space into more of the remote world. And that's not an easy transition for a lot of coaches, because they miss that kind of emotional connection and some of those relationships that they might have had with their clients. So navigating that and, talking about coaching and talking about biomechanics and talking about those things and programming, whatever, that's all pretty simple stuff. But being able to navigate the aspects of building relationships with people that you're not physically seeing, I think is a huge just kind of miss that a lot of coaches might be getting right now as they're trying to kind of build out that part of their career, add that revenue stream to their business. And, so that's something we're super proud of. We've had a lot of good feedback from it. And I appreciate yours as well. That means a ton coming from you. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Something that's come up quite often, and it's with reference to 2020, is that feeling of discomfort. I was going to say uncomfortability, and I'm I don't think that's a word. Move on. Discomfort. And so it's just, I even heard it in our last episode together, just you kind of have to be outside of your comfort zone to experience any growth. And 2020, some people, it looks like they were crushing it, and maybe they were completely just out of their element. What was, when I say the phrase out of your element, does that ring a bell for you at all? Or did you kind of feel you were this is just same scenario as a previous situation in your career, just different context? Speak more on that, expand on it for me if you would.
Yeah. And I mean, one, if you're not making up words in fitness, you're not doing it right. So that's
exactly.
Just keep on rolling with that. That's your word and you can use it. To your larger question, I think, it was a transition. It was a stressor, but again, I think as with everything else, biological or chemical, stress builds adaptation, and adaptations cannot be built without the presence of a novel stimulus, right? So growth requires getting discomfortable, right? I'm going to use it now. That's like the inverse of yours, so I'm going to use it. It requires being uncomfortable, and I think that's something that over the course of my career, and a lot of it does have to do probably with my age and the years I've been in the industry, but I've learned to kind of embrace that, that being uncomfortable and being out of my element. Because if you kind of take a step back and you look at things from the 1,000-foot view, you will see there's pattern recognition. You'll see models, and any time that you're looking at a situation like this, there's probably something that you can relate it to within a different context, just as you just said, right? Whether we're talking about being uncomfortable in training and us perceiving that as a good thing because we know it's going to lead to the quote unquote gains, or, again, learning new material that's difficult to learn, right? To increase our intelligence and our knowledge base on a certain subject, or just, getting uncomfortable in a relationship to dig deeper with an individual. Right. And to build a better bond. Right. That's something even like Sebastian Junger talks about in like the book Tribes. Right. So I think in any scenario and within any environment, discomfort, obviously not to the extremes, but discomfort is not a bad thing. It's probably something that we need to actually embrace and start looking at the opportunities that it could provide, rather than maybe the detrimental emotional effects that we get acutely from it, and that's something that, we talk about a lot. We talk about it a lot with training. We talk about it a lot with business development. We even talk a lot about that with the personal development side, right? Like, you've been through the program. Week 1, we're doing strengths needs analysis, right? And I think that's for a lot of people, the most uncomfortable part of the program is they're coming in ready to talk about like how a femur works and how much IR you're going to get in mid propulsion or something like that. And we're talking about strengths and weaknesses or perceived limitations. And that's not something they were necessarily expecting, but it's something they desperately need, right? And that's something that the feedback that we get is, people just sit and stare at that document for, like 30 to 45 minutes before they type something, just because they're kind of struck with the magnitude of kind of what those words represent and being authentic within that process. And that's something that, again, I think is super important. It's something I struggle with as well. And, whether it's, I'm probably better at listing out my limitations than I am my strengths, as most people are, right? It's usually, ironically, the strengths that we have the hardest time talking about with people. Lest we want to be perceived as, narcissistic or egocentric or whatever. So I think that's one of those things where if you can sit down and be really honest with yourself and get uncomfortable in that process, you're going to grow from it, because you're going to learn how to leverage your strengths and leverage those opportunities better. And then also to fill in the gaps and mitigate some of those perceived limitations. Or you're going to be able to analyze those perceived limitations and realize that they might not even matter given the context of what you're doing, right? I'm a terrible typer. It doesn't matter with what I do, right? There are a lot of things that I'm not good at that don't actually affect me on a daily basis or affect my work on a daily basis at all. So me getting hung up on those things is a complete waste of time with no return on, emotional investment, right? Or financial investment or whatever from that perspective. So I think as we kind of look at, God, I gotta reel this back into your actual question. But I think if we actually look at this as, kind of the circumstance we've all been in, stepping into that kind of alternate reality of being in the online space and being a remote coach, I think it just, if anything, it's going to sharpen our actual communication skills. And I think that's what people really need to learn, because the programming is the same, right? If I run an assessment on somebody and I write out their program, it doesn't matter if I'm training them in person or if I'm training them from another country. The program's a program because I'm principle based, right? It's going to look very much the same. So when I start looking at communication, well, it's easy to have conversations with people in person, but can you maintain and build a rapport and a relationship online, right? Like that's tougher. That's way harder for people typically. So for me, or at least it was for me, right? So for me, that's been something I've really embraced, and even looking at like Matt and I in our business, I've met Matt twice in person. He was working for me prior to me ever meeting him in person, because we'd already built a really good relationship and a really, really high level of trust through communicating with each other through, Zoom and all these other, kind of platforms that have now propped up. And, so I think that's something that's invaluable. And I think once we do go back to normal gym settings, knock on wood, I think that's only going to strengthen coaches' ability to communicate in person with their clients as well, and also continue that to out of session when appropriate. So I do think we can use these skills and within both contexts. So strengthening them in the more stressful context will in turn most likely strengthen them even more in the easier context with less perceived limitations from an environmental perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally on the same page with all that stuff. Like when you talk about communication, being able to work well with a person, whether it be in like the structure of your business or the structure of your training, like how much you get from training. That's something that I've really thrived in the sense that like most of my newer clients this past year, I worked with them virtually or through Instagram before I even met them in person. Like some I haven't even met in person yet. And it was just that for that to be something that I already kind of had a handle on, then I got to kind of develop it even more within the constructs of like, how do you program your stuff? Like, how can you communicate your programming in a more clear way? And what I really liked about the AMRAP program and the mentorship was just how it was kind of based on the inputs of the user, not so much of the coach, like in the sense that like you're working with weight and you're going to decide what that is, and you're going to have like the context to understand if you are progressing or not. And you're going to be able to have the context that you need to understand like so many times running the AMRAP program for me as an individual, I would like hit a wall and I'd be able to decide right away like what the issue was, whether it be how efficiently I was actually managing my stress or like how my nutrition actually was. Like there's so many times when I've like called myself out on my own shit. Like I've been like, well, when I trained really well, I was getting a lot more sleep. And when I started hitting a wall, I had less sleep because I was overthinking something. And so it's just like eye-opening for me to realize how effective that was just with how my brain works. And then again, in turn, it was the same effectiveness for a lot of my clients, just using that style instead of delegating certain instructions and kind of leaving them sort of wondering if they were broken or if they were doing it right or if they were getting out what they could get out. So in all constructs, it was very helpful to have that different style and that communication refinement in the sense that like communicating not only in the interpersonal build a rapport with people way, but also communicating in the how are you translating your thoughts on strength to the client, the end user kind of thing. And because like for me going into this whole industry, like one of my strengths has been just like I've done so many different jobs that I've been able to communicate with people. Whereas some people, it's their knowledge of exercise physiology. They used to be a high performing, very competitive athlete kind of thing. I have like an athletic background, but definitely wasn't like the best player on the team in any context kind of thing. But to dial us back in, I want to talk about your educational journey and just how you've continued to develop yourself. How has that gone? What has the journey been like there in the last year or so?
Yeah, I mean, education's funny to me, right? Because education is, especially because a lot of it is built on choice, right? And because of that, it's also built a lot on selection and confirmation bias. Right, is we're typically going to pursue a lot of the education that we already find interesting or we already believe, right? Because we want to validate our beliefs, as human beings, right? That's kind of one of our basic needs. And my biggest thing for the last year to maybe even 2 years is, I've had kind of two goals, and one of those is to actively challenge my own beliefs, right, and see if they hold up to critical feedback. and just more critical thinking from my perspective. And whether that's, actual training principles or some of the systems that I've studied in the past, actively challenging those things has opened my eyes to a lot of flaws in a lot of those systems and a lot of things that I just was not right about, or I was maybe overconfident in the magnitude of the rightness, quote unquote, of those things, or the context of the application of those things. And, so that's kind of been step number one for me. And number two is kind of, again, looking at using all of these systems as tools to kind of build my own model out of those things, rather than relying on a systemic variation of a model, and finding ways to kind of create a conglomerate of all of the things that I've learned over the last, almost 15 years in the industry, whether it be, again, just, biomechanics or respiration strategies or programming strategies or whatever, creating kind of the best possible model for the people that I actually work with. Because again, when you look at any kind of training model, and this is something we talk about in the group mentorship, so it's not new news for you, but the number one factor of any training model should be the people that you're actually training, right? Whether that's breaking that down individually to like people, or whether it's looking at a demographic that you tend to be working with more so, right? So if you're in a post-rehabilitative context and you're working on bridge programs to get people back to like a level of health, that's going to be different than if you're working with like Gen Pop clients who are mainly looking for, weight loss and strength gain and more of a health style benefit. And that's going to be different than if you're working in an athletic performance environment where you're helping athletes really try to optimize and maximize their abilities respective to their sport or task. So if the model's not built around a demographic, it's not contextually appropriate to anybody, right? And that's where, we always talk about like that George Box quote. He's one of the best mathematicians in history, right? But his famous quote is, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And the utility of a model comes in the context that's being applied, right? And everything is right within some environments, and everything is wrong, within other environments. And all we're trying to find is a contextual match to the application of the model that we're building. And for me, that meant, from a lot of the education that I've studied through the years and a lot of the things that I might enjoy myself, I might have to kind of throw it out the window because it's not very useful with the people that I'm actually working with. And, that's something I found early in my career. I wasn't really conscious of what I was doing. I was just trying to make sure I could help people in the most appropriate way, right? I wasn't breaking it down to these schematics, but now as I kind of analyze these things a little further and start looking at the choices I've made throughout my career, I can kind of look at that decision-making process that I was going through and understand how I was trying to weave the lines of saying like, hey, like if I want to be successful in this industry, I have to validate my training to my clients first and foremost. My peers aren't paying me. My boss isn't even paying me. I have to make sure that my clients are happy with the things that I'm doing, and the training interventions that I'm doing validate both their needs from an assessments perspective, but also their wants from a goal perspective, because there is an emotional attachment to training for many people. Like people don't make decisions rationally. Right. Like most decision making, when we start looking at just the general population, is a very emotionally based, decision. And to say that we have to take emotion out of training and we have to be really systemic and really tactical and really strategic from that perspective and analytical takes the human component out of training. Because at the end of the day, if a client doesn't like what they're doing, training is a luxury, right? They'll go train with somebody else, or they won't train at all. And now you're not helping anybody, right? So I think for me, as I build that model, we talk about both a training model and a service model, right? So looking at, not only the interventions we're going to be prescribing people, in a categorical perspective, but also the environment that we want to create during the actual training process. How do we want our clients to feel and perceive us as coaches and the training environment that we're creating for them, whether that's the physical environment or the actual programming itself and what we're trying to elicit from an adaptation perspective.
That's awesome. I mean, like, it kind of aligns with my most recent episode where Lucy Hendricks hosted the show, and she got me thinking, and I talked about like how you kind of have to let go of the teddy bear that is that method of training that you hold so dearly, like whether it be the financial investment that went into the development or just how much how much better it made you feel to learn a certain concept. Like if it doesn't mean anything to your client, then it doesn't mean anything to you in that moment. Like it's just, you kind of have to find the thing where the client actually feels the most engaged and where it actually genuinely impacts their life the most. And for some people, like a certain exercise just might be completely irrelevant to them. Even if you can see the relevance, if it doesn't mean anything to the client and a different method that actually has a similar outcome does, then you have to hop into that other thing. But to kind of keep us rolling and give you back the microphone, essentially, I thought of this term and I call it the 2020 effect. Just because I've asked so many people what 2020 did for them, or like what how it changed them, and everybody is like, well, I mean, I stayed in my house more, spent more time with family. It just is, it's fairly self-explanatory. But with that being said, like there's something that the year did to each one of us in a very different way that changed us, that might be irreversible. And after I've done all that banter, like what are your thoughts on that? Like, has there been anything that you would say has changed you because of that this past year that has come and gone?
Yeah, I mean, it's yes and no. I'm somebody who, one, is very introverted, and I tend to like stay away from people anyway, for the most part, unless I'm forced to by my extroverted wife. So I don't do like a lot of social stuff anyway. Even when I go to the gym, I don't talk to a lot of people. We always joke at like the gym I'm at now, like it took me like a full year to actually have conversations with half the people there. So that's just kind of who I am as a person. I've always been that way. I've got a lot of social anxiety, and I'm not comfortable in a lot of those environments. So I kind of stay to myself anyway. And then two, as somebody who's also a husband and a father, and takes those jobs extremely seriously, probably even more serious, not probably more serious than, my day job as a coach and running some of the education stuff we do. I actually, got to see my family more, right? My kids were home for a huge block of that. So I got to see them all day, every day for a long period of time. My wife was working remotely. She was, we were, just lucky enough that she got to do that as well. My job's always been remote, but she got to, switch out of office for hers and work remote. And I got to see her every day and eat lunch with her and, walk the dog and, spend those extra, 10, 20, 30-minute blocks throughout the day where we both had openings. And, from a pure relationship perspective, I think it didn't do anything outside of just strengthening kind of our core family dynamic. And, so that was really positive, for us. On the flip side of that, not so much with myself, but I also saw like my kids struggle a lot with not being able to go to school and see their friends and be socialized in that manner and be able to play, whether it's playing sports or just meeting up at the playground or going on play dates and just hanging out with their friends. That's a huge miss that I think a lot of people who, maybe aren't parents don't really think about. Like school is obviously education based, but my kids are 9 and 7, right? So it's just as much a socialization and learning those skills on how to, react and communicate and interact, within different groups of people and with different types of people and people from different backgrounds. And they didn't get that. Like you can't replicate that on a Zoom call with a bunch of 7-year-olds. Like that. I mean, props to all the teachers, first off, because I witnessed a lot of those firsthand. I was like, that's patience to the extreme, right? So being able to do that and now being able to go back to school, like I see a complete 180, in my kids as far as like just their overall happiness, and a lot, it's not because the curriculum has changed. It's not because they don't like being at home. It's because they need that constant social interaction as children. And I think that's a huge, huge thing that was just missed for almost an entire year. And I am interested to see if it does have longer lasting effects. with the kids who've been, in these grades, elementary to middle school to high school, and then to see what maybe that did. For me, from a business perspective, we've always been remote. Ever since I started this business, we've been 100% online. So it didn't affect us directly, but it affected the people we worked with very directly. So we were indirectly affected, right? And it led to different conversations with a lot of people. It was no longer about like client acquisition and kind of running your brick and mortar building. It was about client retention and giving better service and giving people something to hold on to while they were kind of stuck at home, throughout this process. So it definitely stretched us as far as like our abilities and our ability to help people as well. So that's kind of where, like, for us, the discomfort might have come from, as far as just saying like, hey, like, our traditional playbook isn't working right now, right? The same way that a trainer working with a client in a gym, you don't have the equipment, you don't have the environment, you don't have a lot of the things. So you have to improvise, and you have to be able to be very creative and out of the box with a lot of your thinking, and be, more so proactive than reactive to the situation, and kind of anticipate some of the obstacles that your clients are going to have, whether it's lack of equipment or lack of time or lack of space. And, for us, looking at the business owners and the coaches that we work with, it was very much the same thing, where it was, we had to anticipate a lot of the problems they were going to be having from a business perspective, whether it was staffing, whether it was, paying their expenses, retaining clients, retaining members. There's just a lot of new stuff, and it was very exciting. It was fun. It was also very humbling, in a lot of ways, because I worked with 2 or 3 people that lost their businesses, throughout this process, and lost a big chunk of their life savings because they poured everything into it. And I think, whenever you see that firsthand, especially from people who are extremely well-intentioned, it's very saddening, and it's really humbling, and really kind of, again, gives perspective, firsthand on, the detrimental effects and the negative impact that this has really had on, like, small businesses, especially, so like that was hard, and those were hard conversations, so you never want to lose a client because they literally lost their business and all of their income and owe the bank a lot of money, right? And there's nothing that you can do from my perspective, is at that point, so it's there's a lot of ups and downs, emotionally, from that perspective too. I obviously didn't feel it the same way they did, but I still felt it, and I think that's, seeing friends go through that and people that you respect go through that is very disheartening, and very humbling. And like I said, just gives a huge new perspective on what this the epidemic and the other circumstances have kind of brought to us.
Yeah, I mean, that completely makes sense, and there's a lot of, like, key points that you showcased in the entire answer that you gave me there. Like, I mean, I think about 2020 effect is not only, like, something that is meant to be reflected on, like, in like an earth-shattering way, but also in, like, in a shaping way, like, in the sense that a lot of kids who went through that experience. Like, I mean, I have nieces that are similar age to your boys, and just in seeing, like, their whole, like, their journey through it all, and they became so much more self-aware. And I imagine a lot of kids became pretty self-aware as to what are their actual needs, like what do they need to fill their bucket, and what makes them feel happier, what makes them feel more upset, and how do they overcome struggles. And you get to learn that at a young age, and instead of getting tossed into the fire at, like, age 18, age 19 kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So a unique dynamic to that sense. But then also with, like, I mean, it's so tough to hear about people losing their business completely. But at the same time, like, I like to be maybe too optimistic in the sense that, like, someone who can handle losing everything is probably going to have a pretty good comeback story in some sense. Like, it might take a lot of patience, and it might take a lot of personal growth and grit and resilience, but in a lot of cases, the lessons that you learn having to having to just stay strong despite all of the obstacles that are dealt your way, like you learn things that nothing else will ever teach you. Like
Mhm.
there are lessons to be taken from that that will help you in the future, and that is all part of the 2020 effect. Like, I mean, like this past year, like it rattled me more than any other year that I've ever encountered, and the amount of failure that I encountered, and it's just failure is a gift. It's like, here you go. This is your next stepping stone. This is how you're gonna step it up a notch for next time. Like the amount of negative feedback that can be received in a constructive way, and how it can refine how you go into the world. So hopefully people understand, like if they're sitting in the shit right now, it's going to be, if you take it in the right way and if you like write down the lessons that you're learning, like you can definitely use that to bolster yourself and hit the ground running. It's just a matter of time, and it's going to take a lot of patience, and you're going to have to be aware of what you need in your life, whether that be family, whether that be the development, whether that be being able to be active. Like I really, really realized how much being active was a game changer for my life. Like having
Mhm.
access to gym equipment was huge. So with all of that being said, I want to talk about strength training, because you're very disciplined in the sense that like you're up early in the morning getting after it. You have like sort of like some structure to your life in the sense that like nothing's going to take you away from your long ass walks. I mean, for anybody still listening, you are the originator of the long ass walks. I speak to them often, and I hope people
Yes.
know that it's not from me. I'm just like carrying on the legacy of the long ass walks. So what brings you back to strength training even when you really don't want to?
Yeah, I mean, training has been just an anchor of mine for so long, and again, like at this point in my life, I've been strength training longer than I haven't. As a 38-year-old, I started as a college athlete when I was 18, right? So I've been training pretty hard at a pretty high level for 20 years, right? And I think, as I've gone through that process, my goals have changed, a lot, back and forth and so forth throughout those years. But the commitment and the anchoring that it gives me never has, right? When I'm not confident in other arenas of my life, whether that's personal or professional or whatever, I can always come back to training. And that's probably the environment where I'm always going to be the most at home and the most comfortable in a lot of ways, right? Outside of just like that family dynamic. And it has been something for me that, even if I don't feel like getting up or I don't feel like training, like I just kind of always do. I don't really think about it that much. I'm kind of on autopilot in the morning. I train at 5 a.m. So the alarm goes off at 4. And I don't think I'm fully conscious probably until I'm in the car most mornings anyway. So it's at that point, I've always trained early. I grew up, in the Midwest, and I was doing work, before school, for a lot of my life, or work early in the summers. And then as a college athlete, we trained in the morning before classes, and then we had practices after classes, so I've always just kind of carried that on. I'm an early riser. I mean, I go to bed at 8:30, so it evens out, right? I'm worthless after like 6 p.m. to do anything, so it's definitely something that, for me, I get up and I get it out of the way and it just kind of starts my day on the right foot. And when I don't get it in, like it impacts my day. Like I feel it just from an overall mood perspective, definitely from an energy perspective as well. So it is something that typically sets the tone for me, just from a physical and even cognitive or emotional perspective. So yeah, like that's big for me. It also gives me the opportunity to get it out of the way before typically the rest of my family's awake. Like I'll get home and the kids are getting ready for school and I can sit down and eat breakfast with them. I can drink a cup of coffee with my wife and we can kind of talk about what we're doing during our days and kind of what we have planned. And, for us, that's a very important touch point. Even if it's only, 5 minutes, some mornings we'll sit down and have the phone somewhere else and, drink a cup of coffee and actually have a conversation to kind of plan out the day. And then we kind of recalibrate and have another one of those after our work days, kind of as before we're making dinner. But it gives us a chance to sit down as a family. And that's a big deal for us. I think it's a big deal for the kids. Again, it kind of centers them a little bit prior to going to school. So The training for me isn't so much the training, but it's probably just the act of getting up and doing something that I kind of brings that anchoring system to my day and to my week. And the walks are, something that I incorporated a lot when I moved back to the Midwest, because I don't think you realize how much you just walk and accumulate steps and movement when you're living in, Manhattan, like I did for 12 years. I was missing that, when I moved here, and I had a lot of free time because I was building my business and I wasn't busy yet. So I would just go for long walks, like during the afternoon or in the morning before I started my day. And again, like for me, like I typically do my best thinking, when I'm walking. That's kind of when I can, again, kind of go on autopilot and enjoy just kind of being present within that moment and kind of think about things and let thoughts come to me, rather than specifically always thinking about, things. And that's just been another big ritual, within my life. And sometimes it's one long walk, and sometimes it's a few miles, right? Some moderate walks, and whether I'm walking the dog or doing whatever. But that allows me to also kind of sneak in just a lot of extra movement, because I'm somebody that, man, if I don't move enough, like everybody knows it. Like we go on vacation, I'm not one of those people that has to like work out at a super high intensity, capacity when I go on vacation, but I'll always get up and take a long walk or take a run or jog or whatever during, before everybody else is up. And usually when we're in like a different city, it's actually a good opportunity to like explore a little bit and kind of see the city before all the people are there, which is how I prefer it as an introvert too. So you'll see me, if I visit somewhere, just walking around with a coffee at like 6 a.m. on empty streets. But those two things for me are just ways to get physical activity in. And physical activity is kind of, again, something that regulates me in a lot of other different ways, whether it be autonomic or cognitive or emotional, or, the intersection of all those things. I kind of just get it out of the way as quickly as possible. And it's not really even to a point now where it's like motivational in any way. It's so habitual and ritualistic that the alarm goes up and I just kind of sit up and start moving and go through my day. And again, a lot of that just has to do with a ton of time in training and a lot of, just patterning over the years probably.
Yeah. And I mean, that makes sense. And just with the whole like creating structure and routine, you kind of get used to that structure and you just kind of fall into the groove. And it obviously takes some time to create that. But you did, and then because you did, it was kind of second nature. But let's talk about like the dark place that you have to go into to put in like 90% effort or 95% effort on like some kind of probably cardio based, maybe strength, maybe it's like your heaviest trap bar deadlift or something. Like, what do you have to do to will yourself to do the stuff that sucks the most when it comes to your fitness and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, and for me, it's never the lifting. Like some of those AMRAP sets are hard, but I ran track, through college and ran the 400, and it sucks just about as bad as anything ever will to do all out, 400 meters, and then I also did about 4 years of like pretty high level competitive rowing in my late 20s, early 30s as well, and. The aerobic stuff is always the stuff that hits the hardest for me. And whenever that comes about and still comes about, I hit that a couple weeks ago. You just have to kind of embrace the fear. It's like, 'cause there's definitely a fear aspect to anything that's going to be like lactic threshold. Like I've done rowing, workouts, or like my wife's found me like laying in the garage, like slobbering all over myself after I puked. It's just like, it's not fun. It will completely knock you out for the rest of the day, sometimes days. And, it's not something I always enjoy. It's just, I'm not that probably, of a terrible person to myself. I don't hate myself that much, but it's definitely something that I think, looking at the big picture, it does give perspective to everything else you're doing, and I'm definitely one of those people who I'm all about, stimulation over annihilation and things of that nature. From a training perspective, I don't think you should be given like RPE 10 every single day. I don't think you should be driving yourself into the ground from an intensity or volume perspective and just digging a huge ditch that you can't, recover from that perspective. But I do think every now and then you have to go to that dark place to know that you can. And the less frequent that you go to that place, the less able you probably or motivated you are to, right? And if we're looking for real adaptation and again, not just from a physical perspective, but also just from a self-efficacy perspective, going to that place and coming back gives you a lot of confidence in a lot of the other workouts, right? We talk about this a lot with that AMRAP program. And even in the program that I'm running now with people, the Meat Rocket, like there's some AMRAPs in phase 1 of that too. And they're not because AMRAPs, will just layer muscle on your body, right? Like it's like one AMRAP's not going to do much for you from a physical perspective. But as well as anybody, it will do a ton for you from a confidence perspective heading into that next session and just from an achievement perspective. And we watch people all the time that, again, they'll take like that 80% 1RM for like 20 reps and they're done and they're just like, holy shit, I did not think I could do that. Right. And then the next week and they're at 82.5%. That's no longer a scary load for them at all. Right. They go into that fully confident. They're excited about it because they've just achieved something, monumental for them from a training perspective the week prior. And I think we do those more so to help people build realistic confidence in their own abilities rather than from a training, physiological or training adaptation perspective. Like it's definitely more psychological from that perspective. And again, that's why like every day is not an AMRAP day. Every set's not an AMRAP set. You might have 1 to 2 per week. But it's more so for the confidence that it brings people going into that next week. So it's a huge dopaminergic driver. You're obviously going to have a huge sense of achievement coming out of it. And that's the same thing if you're rowing a 2K time trial or you're trying to PR your mile or 800 or 400 from a running perspective, or you're trying to hit that 2 mile, sub 430, assault bike drill that you love so much, right? You're always chasing those numbers, the numbers in your head. And the closer you get and able to tick more boxes off on that and keep notching those things down, the more satisfied you're going to be with your training and probably the more adherent you're going to be to your training going through it. And also like especially like on those assault bike days, like I bet you got your sleep the night before because you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Right. So we can also look at like utilizing those high output days as tools for behavior change from a recovery and lifestyle perspective. Like no one's like staying up late drinking before an AMRAP day or a time trial on the assault bike because they know. And, we do a lot of stuff in groups and they don't want to have to bag it in front of the group too and be like, hey, I was too hungover to go out and do my thing today. I was like, I'm going to have to just call it a day or go kind of half ass. And like, nobody wants to do that in front of the group too. So we can kind of use that social pressure as a positive reinforcement for some of these behavioral changes as well. So it's definitely multi-dynamic. It's definitely multifactorial. But yeah, I think the dark place, like we've got, socio-environmental, factors that are going into it. We've got personal and emotional factors that are going into it. And there's definitely just kind of this need we have as people who want to create change in ourselves to really see how far our physiology can take us in a lot of these cases and to improve on the week prior or the month prior, whatever it might be based on your programming scheme.
Definitely. I mean, like I probably lean a lot on because I'm a dude with a lot of emotion. So sometimes I harness that for going to my dark place when I'm training and stuff. But like, I like how you talk about how it kind of like hones us in for those holistic purposes in the sense that like nobody is going to beat themselves up on purpose outside of their training because of what training means to them, whether it be like the accountability of having like-minded people or whether it be having that invested interest in being at your best because of how it felt to go through that AMRAP day. Like in the AMRAP program, Fridays felt like $1,000,000 because it's all right. Like doesn't matter what we do, this is going to feel awesome kind of thing just because of how it's structured. But yeah, it all makes sense. And I kind of want to quickly segue to one more topic that was on my mind as we were going into this episode. And with reference to creating leaders, you're someone that I have watched create leaders around you. But I think the word that you liked to use best was facilitating leadership kind of thing.
Mhm.
So what is your why for that? How would you describe it? Like, I know, I have a feeling that I know why you would do it because we have similar personalities, so I know why I would do it. But like, I just want to hear it in your words, like with the whole topic of facilitating leaders. Like, what inspires you to do that? What calls you to do that?
Yeah, I mean that as I got into management, oh gosh, almost 10 years ago within my career, um, that was kind of the big impetus of that is, the facility that I was working within wasn't doing well. I was the highest performing coach, at that facility. And, I remember, I wasn't a good leader, at first. I went to my manager and basically looked at her and said like, hey, like these trainers suck. Like I'm kind of embarrassed by what I'm seeing like on a daily basis. But I also, was coming to her with problems and not solutions, right? Where I never talked to them. I would literally walk around and just not talk to people and just talk to my clients, train my clients, had a few friends on staff, but we had so much turnover and so many people that I just viewed as being so unprofessional that I didn't even communicate with them because I didn't want to waste my time getting to know somebody who might not be there, in a month, right? From that perspective. So she looked me, bold face in the eye. Shout out Anita Golden. She's fantastic. She works for Lifetime now. And she said, hey, how about you do something about it? What can you do to help these coaches? And I started an education meeting every week where we talked about training and I did a lot of Q&As with, just the trainers there and trying to help them kind of game plan case studies, through their clients. And then we had organized case studies that I would run and we would look at people's programming and talk about it, not me being, critical in a critiquing way, but just talking about the whys of what they were programming and getting them to critically think about that process and actually have a filtering process for exercise selection and application for their clients. And, we started with, I think I had one trainer in the first meeting. And 6 months later, we were in New York. So there were 20 plus locations of this, this organization there. I had 250 coaches from multiple locations around us coming to this meeting and had to move it into the group fitness room and get a mic and all that jazz. And that was something that I saw the power of that very early on and helping trainers become better coaches, right, for their clients. And that was really impactful to me because making an impact is something that I'm pretty passionate about. Like I love working with people individually, but if I can help coaches who all have, 10 to 20 trainers, clients under, that they're working with, if I can make an impact on all of that, I can grow that exponentially from that perspective. And, I'm definitely not altruistic in the fact that I just want to give everything to everybody for like completely unselfish terms. Like helping people makes me feel good. Like there's a selfishness to all altruistic actions, right? Inherently. And like it feels good to help other people. That makes me happy, so I keep doing it. And when I later got into management, a lot of that was the same thing where I had a lot of good coaches who wanted to have a bigger impact and drive the trajectory of their career a little more and become management and leaders themselves. And, so I started looking at ways to create mentorship within my staff and give people the opportunities to develop their own systems and products and whatever within that facility and become assistant managers and then, go on to lead their own facilities and be managers in those. And, but the thing that I now realize through like my master's work that I was doing is really looking at kind of that full range leadership model. That I was much more of like a servant leader than an actional leader, right? And the company I was working with actually in no way appreciated the way that I led my teams. I had great numbers. I was the manager of the year nationally for them 2 years in a row, but they didn't like the way I went about it because I didn't use a lot of the policies and procedures that they had set up from an organizational perspective. I was much more about creating opportunities than delegating tasks, right? And that just felt more comfortable to me. That's how I want to be led, from a leadership perspective. So when I started looking at it that way, I ended up going into, upper and regional management where I was, managing managers, from that standpoint, and got really frustrated with the politics. And that kind of led me into, eventually a couple stops later into this program where, we worked through the mentorship program and we did these things. And like for me, everybody can be a leader. Like leader has nothing to do with the position. Like it has nothing to do with the destination, right? It's just being able to influence those around you in a positive way. And for me, like working with coaches, like that, they're leaders to their clients. Like just working with human beings, you're leaders to your family and friends, right? And if we're just looking for positive influence and positive impact and being able to support people and elevate their abilities, like for me, that's just being a good human being. Like that's, so I think leadership in general is kind of it's a vague word. It's a word that we use a lot because sometimes we don't know how to describe, some of these other inherent things. But for me, like leadership is just being that person who always has, the important people in your lives back and will do things to help them promote their careers, either professional or their relationships, personal, or their opportunities, or just make them feel good on a bad day. And that's super important for me. And as somebody who I didn't have a ton of friends growing up. I grew up in a rural area, and it's like I always wanted more friends. And I learned really early on that if I can make other people feel good about themselves, I'll always have friends. Right. And I think that's something that, as an adult has just carried over into how I interact with people professionally as well. And that's something that I'm really proud to say, we've worked with almost 600 people in the last 3 years, within our groups and individual products. And we come out of those groups, with, not only hopefully coaches who are improving their businesses and doing things like that, because that's obviously important because we want you to be able to stay in the industry and be successful. But we come out of it with a lot of friends and a lot of relationships. And that's something that's very important to me. And especially in a world of social media where a lot of people use their platform more so to be kind of polarizing or, create maybe a negative emotional response. And to build a better community is something that, I'm very interested in and very invested in, from a professional standpoint. And I think I hope that's something at least that kind of shines through with a lot of the messaging that I put out there. But a lot of it is just it started with me wanting to have more friends. And then it kind of started with me wanting to be surrounded by better people and then helping them become better people and better professionals, and not better people. That's terrible, but better professionals, we'll call it that. And just giving them opportunities to really grow and succeed in their own way rather than maybe the ways that I had dictated previous.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. And I can speak to the fact that once you've gone through the compound performance mentorship, you kind of gain, if you're open to it, you gain a new internet family. The amount of times I've chatted with guys from the mentorship still, and I have every intention to keep chatting away with them. And it's just it gives you more of a base to build up from. It gives you people to kind of hold you accountable to your own goals, the things that you set out to do a year ago. They're gonna keep you after them. They're not gonna kind of let you give up on yourself. And in these times, everybody is going to have their lows and their highs. Everybody needs a support group to kind of build them back up and get them back on track. To keep us on time, I want to challenge you to challenge my audience to do a challenge of the day. So essentially, you're just going to say your challenge of the day is, and honestly, don't overthink it. Just think of something that you think that somebody could do that would enhance their experience, whether it be today or through their week or through their year.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be off topic, but compliment a stranger today. right? Like open a door for somebody, hold the door open, just tell somebody to have a great day, tell somebody their outfit looks great, not in a weird way, but, just give somebody a compliment, and do something nice for somebody that you don't know, right? It's kind of one of those things where, they talk about that from an altruistic perspective again a lot, where there's nothing that's going to boost your mood more than doing like an act of service or an act of kindness. And so when I look at challenges like that, like it's like, yeah, like go do your 10,000 steps and eat some vegetables and whatever, get a workout in. But those are all things that, only benefit us personally. Right. So my challenge for your audience is to go do something kind for somebody else, preferably somebody that you don't know, and let it impact both their day and yours in a positive way. Moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, very on brand. This is the perfect challenge for a podcast like this. And I can speak to the fact that like the last person I held the door open for actually just messaged me the other day and was very happy that I had done that. Not to pump my own tires, but just the fact that it was kind of like an icebreaker. Like it's for both you and I are both introverts. Like when you talked about not talking to anybody at the gym, I was like, oh, that is me, like through and through. Like I've operated at my gym since February 2019 and probably spoken with like 15% of the people that work out there. And like not including my clients. I'd speak to all my clients. I'm pretty chatty with them, but like it is so important to do the little things despite how much a person might have going on in their life and despite how much other things might mean more, like financially or with respect to the goals that we have on our mind, because those small little actions, they add up fast. Like you could totally turn somebody's day around. You could break the ice on a connection that might otherwise not even exist. And yeah, with regards to the stuff that you're putting out these days, like what are the things that you want to promote the most that you're offering? Like I know you have like the group program, you have the mentorship, you have one-on-one stuff. Tell me a bit about that as we close out this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things going on because we're closing up our Q1 mentorship now. We're in week 10, so we'll be launching the Q2 group in mid-April. I told somebody March the other day, and that was wrong. So in April, somewhere around that kind of third week is projected, and kind of be talking about that on social media and everything at the beginning of the month. And then from like the training groups and things like that, Matt and I both have a specific group based on the things that we're doing right now, and so it's literally just following along our training program, based on our goals. And Matt's is very hypertrophy based. He's in kind of his off-season powerlifting mode where he is looking to just build tissues and get stronger and get more jacked. And then mine is more kind of athletic development and kind of a hybrid running and or any kind of aerobic activity, hybrid conditioning and strength training, program. So those are going super well. And we've got over 200 people total on those right now. I think we just started Monday, which is nice. So I had day 2 this morning. And then from the individual stuff, we do individual coaching, from a training perspective, and pretty much work exclusively with coaches at this point. Again, Matt handles all of our power lifters, and I kind of handle the majority of the other people. And then from a mentorship perspective, I usually work with anywhere between, 5 to 10 people one-on-one at any given time. And, so that's something where registration is open. I don't necessarily advertise it. It's more so for people who seek me out and are really looking for that. Because it is, I do expect investment on both ends, from that perspective. So there's a lot, both group and individually, that it kind of always up, and they're, in our link trees and all that good stuff. We just launched a podcast of our own and have released 2 episodes, with the third one coming out Thursday. So this is Compound Performance Radio, and that's on iTunes and Spotify at this point. Yeah, that's about it. Everything else, we're looking at some big things from a corporate wellness perspective later on in the year, but nothing that's necessarily going to be like general audience facing. Yeah. We're just going to keep progressing what we do as much as we can.
Yeah, and I mean, that's awesome. And I mean, I tend to give shout outs to the stuff that you guys do often, but I'll make sure to put the links in our description today. And I honestly hope that people go back and listen to the other episode, because there's just so many like important discussions that we had, back June 3rd, 2019, that will add context to this whole discussion and kind of contribute to everything. But with that being said, I'd like to thank you so much for coming back on the show, having your reappearance on the Lifestyle Chase. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always appreciate these. I always love sitting down and chatting with friends. So it makes for a good kind of first thing in the morning for me.
Definitely.